Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today we are at the absolute pinnacle of life. We are on Reddit, and today we're going to go through some of Reddit's perceptions of balance and look at some Reddit suggested balance changes. Normally I do this, and then you guys just tell me that I'm an idiot, and no, what are you thinking about this and that and this? So I thought, why don't I join you this time, and instead we can all flame other people together and, tell them how stupid they are and incredibly, infantile their brain is. But first I thought we'd start off with one of the better Reddit things that comes out of the Legends of Runeterra Reddit, and that is Impetuous Panda's surveys about what people think about the game. And this is pre 2.90, so this is before the Blossoming Blade and Inspiring Martial changes, and the taliyah and Malphite ones as well. So this is, we're taking the latest data, but obviously it's not like the latest data. But we will go from here just to sort of understand, because not too much has changed from that. Yes, Azir Irelia got a bit worse. Yes, taliyah and Malphite got a bit better. But overall, I think most people would accept that, generally, most things are still pretty similar. So let's take a look at what the results were from this as well. In case you haven't seen them, you know, those of you who are perhaps more dedicated to the game would have seen them. So this is kind of the sort of general where people fall within within their ideas and their ranks. This is people's idea of strength of each region. This is quite interesting to view as well, I think. So Shadow Isles on top. I think most people would say that Shadow Isles is the best region. I actually think the region balance isn't too bad. I think we have a problem with deck balance, but not necessarily as much region balance. I would agree that Shadow Isles is the best. And maybe is the only one that I would call problematic, but I think the rest are pretty in a good area. And you can kind of see, I'd consider anything from 3.5, from 2.5 to 3.5 is okay. And you can see that most of them do fall within that range. Target on Treema slightly above, but I do wonder if that maybe has changed now after some of the nerfs to the Azir Irelia deck. But with that said, let's keep going to the big one, which is the champion. So this is kind of the champion ratings. What people think of the champion. So you can see obviously Azir and Irelia and Lysandra and Nasus are all at the top, which I think most people would agree with. What I find really interesting about some of this is sometimes the change, Nasus goes from 3 and completely fine to all of a sudden being 4 and not fine. I find those kind of things quite interesting. And Lee Sin here goes down 0.6. Azir goes up 1.2 because of the introduction of Irelia. But I find these kind of things interesting. So obviously you kind of see your usual suspects. I wouldn't necessarily agree with this list really at all. This to me is a big overreaction. I don't think Irelia on her own is that great. I think she's okay. I think the deck is really good. But Irelia is if you play Irelia with other decks, Irelia isn't amazing. And I could say that about other things as well. Nasus, I don't think is amazing on his own. It's just that the deck is really good, right? I don't think Nasus himself needs a nerf. So I find this quite interesting. Whereas Draven, I would say Draven is nuts on his own. Draven, I think, is probably the best champion. On his own, standalone value wise, I would probably say Draven is the best. But you can see here he's sitting what's that, 8, 9, something like that. And so yeah, you can look at this, and I'll link this in there as well in case you want a big read of it, because it is a really cool, interesting post. You can see at the bottom here we've got obviously the Taliyahs and the Heimerdinger and the Katarina and the Lux, Zillion, Malphite. You would expect that. Zillion below Malphite I find quite interesting. I'd probably swap those, but they are very close. So yeah, you can go through it all, and then you have your kind of ones that are okay here in the middle. But that is that. But for now, for the rest of the video, that was just sort of get a general idea. I'm sure most of you already have a general idea of what people are thinking about it, but I just wanted to showcase that first. And now we're going to go into some Reddit suggested balance changes and see if we agree or do disagree for what hopefully will be an absolutely massive patch in 2.11, as we'll also get new cards as well. So here is our first post, which came in 17 days ago. None of these are like super cutting edge recent, but 17 days ago, you know, is I think what, just before the last patch, you know, about a week before the last patch. So you know, not too far ago, and these changes very well still could happen. So our first card that we're looking at, of course, here is psyscout, and this is by the user Audio. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Obviously psyscout is a 3-mana 2/4, and they want to change it to play predict. If you pick a landmark, draw, it says him, but I guess, and grant me elusive. So if you pick a landmark on your predict, you draw it straight away for psyscout. Now that would make psyscout a very powerful card. Obviously it would require some synergy though. You would have to have landmarks. I do wonder if that would, you know, I do wonder with this, with like Zilean, it would definitely would be a big buff for Zilean, right? And it might be a little scary even. But what I will say is, I do like the change as a kind of concept. If you've watched this channel long enough, you'll know that I always like synergistic changes, and anything that requires more synergy, I'm kind of for, and anything that kind of makes things sort of generically good, like, you know, they'd be good in any deck, I'm kind of against. So I actually don't mind this at all, because this kind of, you know, it's requiring that you have landmarks in your deck, whether that's through Zilean or just, you know, having landmarks anyway. I do somewhat worry that it would make, you know, some landmark, like say if we ever got a powerful landmark again, like a Grand Plaza or the Veiled Temple, like, you know, I do worry that, you know, that would just become too powerful a combo if you could just like predict and draw it straight away and get a free draw as well. I would worry about that. For instance, I would rather make psyscout just buff the stats. I think that would be better. You know, if you give psyscout 3 attack as an elusive, that's a threat. You know, all of a sudden you have a real threat on the board, and I think that would be a good thing for Shurima in general. To have another good 3-drop to, you know, if you're going to bring Merciless Hunter down, which I think a lot of people would expect or want, then, you know, having another 3-drop that's good in Shurima would also be nice. So this first change, I probably wouldn't do it myself, but I'm not against the idea. It might be a little strong, but, you know, I mean, you could always make psyscout a 2/3, and I think then you could, you know, warrant having the draw on there as well. So with that said, let's go on to our next card, which is a Kahiri the Student, which I think is a good choice of card again to potentially change. Let's see. When you pick me in a prediction, draw me, and I cost 1 this turn. Ooh. That one's a spicy one. I'm already liking these quite a lot. Because I feel like Kahiri the Student is just kind of a bit dull. Like, you know, I feel like it doesn't really fit Shurima that well. Like, having 4/4 worth of stats, it doesn't feel like, you know, that Shuriman of a thing. Like, you know, generic stat sticks just don't feel that Shuriman, you know, like even Renekton, who you can see sort of, or even Nasus, like, you know, the synergy within them, you want to be doing stuff with them, even if they are just sort of big stat things. You know, you want to be challenging with Renekton, and you want to be slaying extra things with Nasus. So at least there's like, you know, you have to go in for synergy there. It's not just plain statted units. So I've always thought Kahiri was a bit weird in that sense. But this, when you pick me in a prediction, do you have to pick it? You do have to pick it in the prediction. So you would have to be in a pretty predict deck. It would help Zilean again. With all these Zilean changes, or any changes to Zilean, or that would affect Zilean, like, we have to be somewhat careful, because we don't know, like, you know, will a Irelia come along, like, for Azir? I know Azir was better than Zilean beforehand, but you know what I mean. Like, you know, will the next champion that comes out help Zilean that much to where, you know, we go, wow, you know, Zilean's really good now? I don't know, but we do have to be a bit careful, perhaps. But again, I like the idea. I like the change. It seems like a cool change, right? And something that I wouldn't really mind them doing. Like a 1-mana 3/3 we have, like, you know, that requires some sort of effect that's within the region. I mean, Shadow Isles, they just got a card that, you know, is a flexible potential 1-mana 3/3. So I don't have a problem with it at all. I think this is a really cool change to a card that probably would never see play otherwise. So a good change in my mind. Renekton, Is this just a change to the damage? I think it is, right? So that essentially it would become a challenge and a normal hit. That's quite interesting as well. I don't hate it. I've always thought with renekton that either what should happen is keep the level up as it is, but he just becomes a generic 8/8 because at the moment it's only when you attack that he becomes an 8/8. Because his level up is kind of difficult to achieve, and I wouldn't mind just making it easier. Like this, like 10. It's so interesting, isn't it? Like, what would renekton become too good? I always think that like there is an opening there to make renekton good, if like, and make renekton like top tier if you want. That maybe they, I don't know that they would ever do this, but maybe they're thinking like, look, we can always make renekton easier to level up and make him a tier 1 champion later on. Maybe if Shurima is in a bit of a downslope in some time in the future, we could always change renekton and help spark Shurima in that sense. By making his level up a little easier, because unlike Malphite, I would say renekton is just like this little change away from being very, very good. I'm not wholly against it because I kind of like renekton as a champion, and as his whole sort of design is kind of cool, I think. So I'm not against it, but I don't think they'd do it just yet. I think they'd wait for sort of Shurima to cool down. Maybe if Shurima ever entered what like Bilgewater is now, I think that's the kind of time they do it. But I'm not wholly against the idea. Taliyah obviously has changed, but let's see what this person suggested. So keeping the 5 mana 2/4, place on an exact copy of an allied landmark or advance all allies landmarks by 2. I think I prefer this. This again, like it makes sense. It seems pretty thematic. I'm gonna assume you've summoned or your landmarks countdown have been completed 7+ times. So kind of going more in for the countdown effect rather than just like a more generic landmark effect. I actually don't mind this at all because I think what I was expecting was perhaps more like I didn't know whether Taliyah was meant to synergize with Lysandra, like, because it kind of is like a countdown landmark thing going on there. So when Taliyah sort of came out, I was like, is this meant to be the pair that we're kind of going for? And it kind of has ended up being, because Malphite ended up being unsuccessful. But obviously it was meant to be Malphite, I think, that they were going for sort of the main landmark synergy, but I don't know what they were thinking there with some of the landmarks that they made in Targon, but this would be quite cool. This would be quite cool indeed, and I think would like this change, unlike the +1/+1 stats where Taliyah is kind of included that deck as like a last minute like throw in, like, oh fine, bring Taliyah along as well. This would be like a change of, you want Taliyah in that deck, you want to advance all your allied landmarks by 2 rounds, you want to summon 3 thralls on the same turn. This would work. I like this. I like this quite a lot as a change. I wouldn't be against this at all. I'd still say that like having landmarks that are worth copying or worth getting the countdown for earlier are more important for Taliyah, but still I don't mind it at all. I don't mind that change at all. This is some good changes, I think. Changing Grumpy Rockbear to a 5/5 again. I'm for. I've said that they should have Overwhelm instead. It's a big bear, with rocks on it. Could that not have Overwhelm? Are bears not like worthy of Overwhelm? Because I think that would make it again worthy of counting them down and getting them and actually playing the Grumpy Rock Bears and then giving them more stats. I think that's the one that I'm really on about, is the Salt Spire card, where they give more stats. That makes sense for Overwhelm, but otherwise maybe not so much. But again, I'm all for changing the Grumpy Rock Bears and Sanctum Conservator, which I think is an 8 mana card, right? Normally. But here it's a 9 mana 8/6. Is it? It has Overwhelm. Does it have Overwhelm normally? I don't think I've ever seen anyone play this card. Play, if you slain A+ unit this game, kill all enemy followers, then summon a copy of me. It's 13, right? Normally? So I think what they've done here is they've changed 13 to 8 but made it a 9 mana card. Which probably would make it more viable, to be honest. So yeah, I'm probably for this as well. Overall, this has been a very good post, I think. I think that these changes are pretty well thought out. They make sense, and I'm not nearly as against them as I thought I would be. I was expecting to be like, this is stupid. You know, look at these idiots. Maybe we will be in time because I've sort of identified these posts without reading them. So with that said, let's move on to our next post. So on to our next post, and this one is by JZinky28, and this was 19 days ago. So again, before the last balance patch. And so they are talking about, you know, some of the top decks before, but as I said, you know, it kind of still exists today. So Azir Irelia obviously is kind of the one where perhaps these changes you wouldn't necessarily do, and obviously we know what's happened to Inspiring Marshal, so I won't talk about this one as much. But Azir, reducing Azir's health to 4 or level up condition to 12 would be significant. I agree. I still think Azir should go to 4 health, even after, you know, the first batch of nerfs to that deck. I still think Azir should go to 4 health. I think that that would give Azir a clear weakness in terms of region. You know, if you're playing against Noxus with Azir all of a sudden, you're kind of worried because now Ravenous Flock and Culling Strike deal with your Azir, and it's kind of like, oh god, you know, my Azir is going to die to do this. And, you know, you perhaps get like a really bad matchup. Which the deck does have, you know, some bad matchups, I guess. But, you know, it would just give, like, Azir a clear, like, yeah, this isn't going to be your game, Azir. But they also want to change Emperor's dice. This would be the harsh nerf, but dice to 3 mana would slow the deck down in a significant way. I know a lot of people suggested this is one that I just cannot get on board with. I know a lot of people are on board with this. Maybe not as much now. But I think that, yes, if you wanted to kill off the deck, this would be sort of your way of doing it. But I personally was never for that because I thought that that would not only just kill off that deck, but kind of kill off Azir as kind of an idea, which I wasn't for. And you know, I think a lot of people, you know, now look at Aphelios and think like, you know, oh, they never should have killed Aphelios as much as they did. But in reality, Aphelios was way worse than Azir. If we're being honest, Aphelios was, you know, Aphelios is up there with Lee Sin as like the worst ever, and I think that those two, maybe Elusives as well, are kind of in their own tier. So Nasus Thresh, Curse Keeper, reducing its stats to 3/3 or 4/2 would allow slow decks to come back from its early game curves. I could not agree more. You know, a lot of people again talk about you know, how they would nerf a lot of different things in Nasus Thresh. But to me, like, Butcher is an example of a card that people bring up a lot. But I just can't help but think, like, Keeper is, like, the thing that, you know, you aim to kill. Like, that's what it's there for. It's, like, the prime sacrifice target. So as soon as you hit that, you hit, like, all the others pretty significantly. And I think changing it to a 3/3 or 4/2, yeah, would be the change that you need. I'd probably go for 3/3, I think, because I think 4/2 would probably be, you know, a lot worse. So I'd probably go 3/3 overall, but I'd be fine with that, and I think that that would be a very good change for the game. And Merciless Hunter, I think is one that we obviously all would agree on. Just making it a 3/3 would just make sense, and it'd still be a very good card. So Lysandra Trundle, this is obviously one where a lot of people, you know, have so many different suggestions. So let's see what this one is. Lysandra, level up goes from in deck to I've seen condition. This would force the TLC player to play Lysandra before turn 8. Allows the opponent to interact with and remove her as well. Again, but what is with these changes? I agree. Me agreeing with Reddit. What's going on? I think that this is a good way of changing it. I know that there's plenty of other suggestions as well, but to me, like, a lot of people say, like, oh, what if we change Matron to this? Or what if we change the Watcher to have this condition instead, and this and this and this? To me, they're always probably going to go with whatever the simplest change is. And if you can fix, like, a problematic combo by just, like, simply changing a champion to I've seen, that still enables, like, that still creates a level up that's possible, I don't see why they wouldn't go with this. It seems like the most simple option that would work, and I think that that's what you should probably do most of the time. So I'm definitely for this as well. And buffs. This is probably the more interesting part. So let's look at some of these buffs. An area revert her stat line back to a 4/3 like she was in Bear and give her level 2 form Overwhelm. I'm not sure about that. I think the first thing they do, I think, is bring the egg back to 0/2. Like Anivia as a 4-3 seems like a bit odd at this point. You know, it's like they've already made this a change to like make her more sort of defensively statted, I guess. Which doesn't kind of, I get what they mean. Like, you know, it doesn't make that much sense for Anivia because obviously you kind of want her to die. So having like less health is probably good. Um, Giving Anivia's second form Overwhelm, I'm not sure what I think about that at all because I don't know if that fits in with what Anivia would do. Meant to be like this ice spirit, right? Like it doesn't feel that overwhelm to me. Anivia never has felt an overwhelming bird. But I think the first thing they do is probably move her egg back to 0-2, and that would probably be fine. I think most people would agree. Yeah, that's probably fine. Augur of the Old Ones, when I'm summoned, if you hold an 8+ card, grant all of the allies overwhelm and regeneration. So Augur of the Old Ones is the card that I like. Which, what does that require? Isn't that what it is? Am I missing something? Is it something to do with 5 attack? I think it is, right? Is it? I have no idea. But either way, I think this sounds like a fun card to play. Then again, beholding an 8-cost card, giving everything else overwhelm regeneration, that might be a bit too good. Like, you think of Vi into this, like, and all you need is just any 8-cost card. Yeah, that might be a bit too good. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Katarina, level 2. 4 mana to 3 mana. So this is a terrible idea. Here we go. We're getting to some of the terrible ideas. They will never do this, by the way. I'm pretty sure they've actually said they will never do this because so many people suggest this and suggested it back in the day, particularly when Katarina was like sort of Katarina and Vladimir for a time were like the only champions that were unplayable. And so you know a lot of people suggested to them how to change both of those champions. And I'm pretty sure they said they would never change Katarina to 3 mana. Because guess what? You know how you don't like when Azir Irelia seems to attack you like, you know, four times in the same turn? Imagine if that happened, but instead of it being 1/1s, like it's actual units as well, with quick attack and stuff like that. So yeah, that they will never do this. As I've said, level 1 Katarina should just be 2 mana instead, and that would fix, in my mind, every problem with Katarina, and she'd be very competitive very quickly at that point. Malphite. So this actually happened. So that's well done on that. And level 2 Unstoppable Force 2 mana to 0 mana. I agree. I think this is exactly what I suggested actually. And I couldn't agree more. This would make sense to me to change Malphite. Again, I still think Malphite probably needs a little more. Again, that could be in terms of changing the actual landmarks within Targon, but I agree. Taliyah leveled up, you summoned 5 to 4 landmarks. Obviously, we know Taliyah did change and got an extra stats instead of this. They're both probably the same in terms of how they actually change the card. Taliyah probably still needs more. Again, it probably has to do with the more landmarks in general. Spiral Stairs. Let me just zoom in for you in case you're struggling to see these. Spiral Stairs, Seed of Strength. Slow to focus, remove fleeting. Yeah, I agree. This needs to not be a fleeting card. It doesn't really make sense that you pay 3 mana to then in 3 turns get something that you have to play on that turn. Doesn't make sense. Time Bomb's going to 1 mana for Zillion. I could see that. I wouldn't be shocked if they did that. Yeah, I actually could see them doing that. Depending on how it goes with sort of the if Zillion has like another champion to synergize with. I think if it doesn't work, that they might do that. Riptide Rex backed up to 7 times. I think that's a good change. Pilfer Goods to 2 mana. This I don't agree with. And I've seen a lot of people talk about this, and I might even do a video on its own about this, about how to buff Bilgewater. I don't get why people do this. It's shocking to me, right? What people tend to do is think, this thing in this region used to be really good, so let's just change it all back and do that again. People kept saying this for Ionia with elusives. They were like, what if we just buff like a bunch of the old elusive cards and like, you know, Will of Ionia back to what they were? It's like, those things got nerfed for a reason. Not only were they good, but like everyone hated playing against them. Like, why are we bringing those back? Why is everyone obsessed with bringing these things back that people hated playing against? I don't know. It's crazy to me that you know, maybe those people weren't around at the time. You know, when Pilfer Goods was 2 mana, and you know Nab was really unfun to play against. You know, when they black market merchant you into double Pilfered Goods. and they'd sit there with like 6 extra cards in hand of yours that now were all like cheaper as well. Like, it's not fun to play against. Like, buff something else. Buff something that wasn't that good this whole time. I don't know, the vulnerable cards in Bilgewater, buff them for whatever reason. You know what I mean? Just not the things that we already know aren't fun. Yeah, I don't agree. If you can't tell, Vaults of Helia, round start, play and round start. So it would do it straight away. Oh, that could be quite a good idea. I don't mind that. Yeah, because then at least it would give you like a reason to play it, and then you could start thinking about some combos anyway, right? Like in theory, you could play a Anivia, Vaults next turn, and it would get you a Rekindler for free, and then give you another Anivia. So that would make some sense. Rasa back to 7 mana. Oh, Rasa. Rasa is perhaps like a card that if you weren't around, it's going to sound really weird because Rasa was 7 mana and was like the dominant card in the game. That was like the card like that everyone was like, oh, this card is insane. Why, what are you thinking of printing this card? It's so good. And then it went to 8 mana and no one has played it since. And it is crazy. And it was like on one of the first ever nerfs of the game. So will they do that? They could. Honestly, they could. I think maybe they'd be like, well, let's try extra stats first. I think they're always going to be careful with these mana buffs, but they could do it. We'll see. Gamer Data, giving back elusive. Or when I'm targeted, give me elusive this round. I agree. So Jay is another card that they kind of redesigned. I think he was 8 mana with elusive with like his abilities, and they made him 6 without elusive, and it was like, why did you take off elusive? Like he was like terrible to begin with. And yeah, I agree completely. So Young Witch to 1/1, going to a 1/2, and Fuzzy Caretaker to a 3/3. I'd be fine with both those changes. Support, I really want support to be good, but it needs more, and it probably needs things like that, like kind of 2 key cards getting buffs. That's probably like the way you do it. Mage Seekers change their condition to you cast 6+ mana spells this game. Would that be? You might need to like tweak some of their things, like to make it like not as good if you're gonna, because like casting 6 mana spells, like a lot of decks will get that by like turn 4. I would have thought like turn 4, turn 5, every game. So you might need to tune it down. Some of the things that like getting a free detain because you've done what most decks do by turn 5. Like having a 3/3 that gets you a detain, that's pretty good. So, you might need to tweak some of those cards as well, but I mean, I don't mind it. But I would probably tweak some of the cards. Unstable Voltician now grants all allies quick attack upon condition being met. Now, that's something I do like. That sounds like a good idea. And so that was some of the balance changes, I guess. Overall, this post here, I agreed with a lot of it. The post before, I kind of agreed with a lot of it. If you want to see more of this, I can kind of pull up some other ones potentially that I can find. I know there's some that I haven't pulled up. But yeah, a lot of good in these posts. I was expecting it to be worse. I was expecting more disagreement. I mean, there are, some that I heavily disagreed with in this, like the Katarina and the Pilfered Goods ones. But that's just me. Maybe, you agree with all of these. I think in general, though, I'd say pretty good, overall pretty good. And so I will link all these posts in the description as well if you want to sort of read it all on your own, because obviously there is things like perhaps some of their explanations I haven't gone through, which maybe will explain why they think those things. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow with another Legends of Runeterra video.